Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. We're diving into something pretty big today, mental toughness. I know you're thinking, okay, mental toughness, that's for Navy SEALs, that's for Olympians, that's for people who really, they do tough stuff. Wrong. Mental toughness is for you, mental toughness is for me, and it's for anyone who's ever set a goal and hit a wall trying to get there. And so whether you're grinding through a fitness journey, you're chasing a promotion at work, or just trying to become a better person, mental toughness is the secret sauce that keeps you in the game. So with that, let's get into it. All right, let me paint a picture for you guys real quick. I love painting pictures and using words. Words are amazing because of that. But let me paint you a picture. A few years back, I decided to run a marathon. Surprise. I wasn't a runner though. My only cardio at the time was typically from my car to work. I wasn't some big active guy. I wasn't a big runner, and definitely not anywhere near where I am today in terms of the mileage that I can do. And I set the goal. I wanted to do it, but holy hell was the training hard. I remember there were some days where I would wake up and say, why am I doing this as I'm lacing up my shoes? What is the whole purpose of this? I feel like I'm beating myself. I'm just pounding my joints together and getting so tired, so fatigued. This is tough. I remember having these thoughts, but I kept going. One miserable step at a time sometimes, but I kept going. And it wasn't until that I crossed the finish line that I understood really what the whole point of running a marathon was. It was mental toughness. Yes, my body had to get trained to run those miles, but at the end of the day, it was all mental toughness. It's not about seriously being unbreakable or being in some Hollywood movie montage where in the last episode I talked about Rocky. You're not in a Rocky cutscene. Mental toughness to me and to others is about showing up when you don't want to, day after day, even when there's no results. Do you know how hard that is? It sucks. But that is what mental toughness is all about. It's grit, it's perseverance, and it's keeping your eyes on the prize when everything is telling you to quit. Here's the kicker, though. It's not some gift you're born with. I don't think people are just born mentally tough. It's instilled into them. And ultimately, it has to be a choice that you bring to fruition yourself. It's a skill that you can build. Anyone can become mentally tough. If you don't believe me, think of David Goggins. David Goggins was this 360-pound guy who was spraying for cockroaches, didn't have a great life. He would always binge eat, and he wanted to be a Navy SEAL. Okay? That's a tough road to go down from 360 pounds, out of shape, to becoming a Navy SEAL. And yet he did it. And he had to go through Hell Week 3 times in order to do it. But he still did it. You can call him crazy, but if that's not a great example of what mental toughness is, I don't know what is. Because that's coming from literally 0 to 100 real quick. And, I want to break down the science of this. How it works, and most importantly, how you can start forging it in your own life and becoming a little bit more mentally tough. There's a study done from Angela Duckworth, which we'll get into today, and we'll pull some ideas from James Clear because he has a great article on this on his website. But I want you to think for a second. When was the last time you faced something very hard? And then ask yourself, did you push through or did you tap out? Hold on to that thought because it's going to matter a little bit later. And I think mental toughness, it comes from one point in your life. This happened to me, so I'm speaking for myself here, but it came from one point in my life where I had to decide to either be fearful or to take a chance. And with the marathon, that's a great example. There's a lot of fear that goes into a marathon. If you've ran one, you know that 26.2 miles can seem very daunting, especially when everyone's super hyped up. And you have to run against these guys who have ran marathons their entire lives. That's what it seems like, at least. And mental toughness is a decision. I firmly believe that. But you have to make the choice every day to be mentally tough. Because like I said, you have to commit to staying with something day after day with no indication of any results or no indication of reward. Fight the battle, stay in the fight. Let's get nerdy, because I love talking science. So we're going to talk about science, because this isn't just good, feel-good fluff stuff. This is real. It's legit. And so going back to Angela Duckworth, she's a psychologist at University of Pennsylvania who's obsessed with grit. I think she's written a couple books on this. But her word for mental toughness is grit. She defines it as perseverance and passion for long-term goals. And her research backs up this matter, which we'll get into. So picture this for a second. West Point Military Academy. Very prestigious, especially in the military. But every year, about 1,300 candidates roll in, and they get hit with beast barracks, which is like a brutal initiation that they do. It's like boot camp, but boot camp on steroids. It's like almost like a hell week in a sense. But it's designed to break you physically, emotionally, and mentally. It's a really tough thing. Super interesting, though. You should go look at it. But you'd think that these jacked dudes and these super smart people, because if you're going to West Point, you have to be both. Not jacked, but you have to be smart at least. You'd think they'd be able to get through it, right? Nope. During her study, she studied over 2,400 candidates, tracking everything, like their SAT scores, their high school rank, their physical fitness levels, what their leadership style was, everything. Guess what predicted who'd make it through? Not brains, not how big they were, but it was grit. And so she built this thing called the grit scale, which measures how much you stick to stuff. And by her terms, it's the golden ticket for learning about grit. And she saw that this same pattern at other Ivy League schools, grittier kids seem to have higher GPAs, even with a lower SAT score. And it's super interesting. Like, she just researched all this stuff. She applied it to like the National Spelling Bee. But it's interesting because the pattern's clear. Mental toughness beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And here's why I thought this was beneficial and interesting to study. We've all met that person, the one who's not necessarily the smartest or not necessarily the strongest, but they won't freaking quit. They're like a little bulldog. They just keep coming back for more. And they're the ones who end up on top. Duckworth, she dug a little bit deeper and she interviewed elite performers, but like different performers. So bankers and doctors, artists, lawyers. And she found the same thing. The best weren't always the most gifted out the gate. They were the ones who kept on swinging, who kept on getting back up when they were beat down. Like, they just didn't stop. They wanted something so bad that was their entire purpose, was to accomplish it. And so what does this mean for you? Like, you don't need to be a genius or a genetic freak to win. No, because mental toughness is the great equalizer. It's about consistency. Consistency truly is something that should be practiced. Like, it sounds weird to say, but you should practice on being consistent with the things that you agree to do with your job, your fitness, your family. Like, be consistent with showing up to each of those things, because ultimately you'll reap rewards for it and you'll get better. But you need to show up when it's boring, when it's tough, or when it straight up sucks. Like when I was running and I had to do like my first ever 16-mile run outside on a Saturday, I was like, what the hell? How is this a training run? Like, this is a half marathon. Like, what the heck? And that's the thing, is you just have to keep on swinging. And I had to tell myself that I was committed to this marathon. And if I didn't get this run in, my performance would be affected. I'd probably struggle a little bit more. But that mental toughness is something that I was able to train. And so think about that for a second. Have you ever seen someone in your life who wasn't supposed to succeed, but they did? Like someone from high school who you never thought much of, but they fought through And now they're in a place that you're like, wow, I never saw that person getting to that point. Like, I'm sure you have. Maybe it's even you. But some moment where it could have been some moment where you just outlasted the odds, where you just kept pushing forward. Now, grit is something, like I said, it takes time to develop. But the more that you exercise that muscle, it's like any other muscle in the body. It gets stronger, it gets bigger, and ultimately it can take on more strain. Like if you're lifting a 10-pound dumbbell and you're doing dumbbell curls, the next week it might be 15. Your muscles can handle more strain and doing the same amount of reps, whatever. Soon enough, you'll be doing 35s, 40s, and you'll be a jacked dude. If you're consistent and you keep training that muscle to take on more load, progressive overload, you can do the same thing with grit. You can progressively overload grit. And for you, it could be, you go out for a mile run. The next day you should go for a mile and a half. Just see if you can do it. And the next day go for 2. And if you can keep on showing up when it's hard and you're raising the bar on a consistent basis, then it's going to prove that you have grit, that you're mentally tough. Everyone needs a little bit in their life, a little bit extra mental toughness. For me, I noticed that there was a big shift in my mindset when social media came into the game. As weird as it sounds, but it was like something that was very comfortable to do. It didn't take much brain power to sit on social media and scroll, find funny memes, and it was like I was detraining my grit muscle, as weird as that is. But just like muscles in the gym, they atrophy. And grit's the same way. That's why you have to be consistent. That's why you must always ask yourself, is this my limit? And if it's not, push forward. If it is, see if you can rise above it. Now, how do we practice mental toughness? Because you can train it, like I mentioned, but how do you actually train this thing? Well, you work it and it grows. That's as simple as I can get. But here's your playbook. I came up with about 5 things that I think are very helpful with developing mental toughness. These are things that I've used, the framework that I've used that's helped me. And so the first one is just having very clear goals. Like you need to know what you're aiming towards. Like you can't be tough if you don't know what you're fighting for. Like vague goals like, oh, I want to get fit, or like I want to start eating healthier. Those are trash goals. Like they're too easy. Like they're too easy to wiggle out of because they're not defined. So make it very specific. Like say I'm running a 5K in 90 days. Or I'm going to meal plan every Sunday and here's what I'm eating. Like write it down, set a deadline, and then own it. Because clarity is your anchor when shit gets really tough. If you know what you're working towards, it just gives you a little idea of where you're going to get to, what the reward's going to be. And you have to show up. But it has to be clear. You have to understand what your goal is. And then just keep pushing. Like keep going towards it. Now, how do you build consistent habits? Because that's step number 2. Is 1, you have to set clear goals, and 2, you need to set up consistent habits. And here's the truth. Mental toughness lives in the daily grind. It's those days when I didn't want to put on my running shoes. Those days when I don't want to show up to work and I'd rather be in bed, but I know I have responsibilities and I know I have clear goals of where I want to get in my profession. And I would just say start small. Like very small. So if you want to work out, like commit to 10 minutes. Commit to 10 minutes a day. That might not be very sexy. No. But it's all about stacking these wins. Because consistency triumphs intensity every single time. It's amazing how many people aren't consistent nowadays. It might be harsh to hear this, but I firmly believe that this is the truth. That people are just not consistent. They either want instant gratification or they want to have the easy solution. And you will consistently make the wrong decisions if you're not trying to push yourself, if you're not trying to work towards your goals. You'll be making decisions and consistent actions that actually take away from what you're trying to accomplish. So if that truth rang in your ears and you felt that it kind of spoke to you, maybe you need to think about where you can be a little bit more consistent. But start small and work your way up. Because progress fuels progress. And if you're not fueling it, it's going to atrophy. That grit muscle will atrophy. And you don't want that to happen, because the activation energy to restart that and to get it back online is going to be so much more than if you were just consistent. And Jocko talks about this with working out. He says you need to, work out every day. You need to push yourself every day. And he's like, on the days when you can't, when you feel exhausted and you're absolutely beaten to a pulp, he says, then go through the motions. And that could mean just showing up and getting in just a small workout just to prove that you were able to get up and go do it. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think that shows strength, because you recognize that, yes, you might be weak right now, but that doesn't mean you're going to stop working towards your goals. Even if the work that you're putting in is not as great as it was the day before, consistency beats intensity every single time. And if you believe that, then it becomes more of a journey than it does a deadline. So think about that for a second. That's number 2. And number 3 is you need to embrace challenges and also embrace boredom. Because success in anything in life is not always glamorous, and sometimes it can feel like a slog. And James Clear, from his article, he talks, which I'll link the article in the show notes, because I think it's pretty long, but it's worth the read. And James Clear talks about falling in love with boredom. Falling in love with boredom. What? But he's right, honestly. Because think about this. A guitar player, the only way they can master the scales that they've done so many times is by to continue to do them. Like, always get your scales in. Maybe that's his exercise every single day. But it's hard. Like, you have to crank it. Like, for me, I like to write. And sometimes when I write a blog post, I go through 2 to 3 drafts before actually coming to one and saying, I'm proud of this one. I'm publishing it. But it's not fun. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it's something I enjoy doing, and it's something I want to improve on. I want to become a better writer. Eventually, I want to write a book, and it has to come from you, and you have to be okay with being bored. It's another muscle that you have to work, and grit plays a huge role in that. Like, sometimes when I'm on a run, because I still run to this day, I'm training for a race that's coming up in June. But when I'm on a run, sometimes I feel like my brain is completely dead. I always enjoy running. It's a great outlet for me. But there are some days where I'm just like, this is so monotonous. Like, I'm doing the same thing that I was doing the other day, being yesterday. I run a lot, run every day. I try to at least 6 days a week. And you have to be okay with the boredom. And you have to try and make the most of it. We're not bored a lot these days. And oftentimes when you're bored, that's when you have opportunity, like you have the opportunity to think, to walk through your brain and to see, kind of what's bothering you about the boredom. But great ideas are often born out of boredom. Like, that's how they're forged, is just through having an idea when you're bored. As weird as it sounds. Like, think about when you're in the shower, you have some pretty cool thoughts, right? You might have an invention where you're like, I'm going to make a toaster that toasts Pop-Tarts, and then when they shoot out of the toaster, it gets sandwiched together with Oreo cream. Like, that might be your invention, but you had it in the shower. I just came up with that on spot. I patented it, so don't take that idea from me. But find joy in the suck. When we run Team Tim, we have this quote on the front of our shirts that say "Embrace the suck." It's not a new thing that's been said, but I love that idea. Embrace the suck, because if you're able to embrace the suck, if you're able to stay in the valleys, then it makes summiting the mountain that much better. And when you get through whatever sucks and you come out on the other side and you're able to experience joy or happiness or fun, like, it's going to amplify that experience because you sat with the suck. You were bored for a while and now you're riding a ride at Disneyland. I don't know. But it's going to amplify that experience. Like, humans are meant to feel, and we're meant to have emotions. I'm reading a book right now called The Dark Age. It's the 5th book in the Red Rising series. And there's this story about this guy. His name's Ephraim. He's a drug addict, and he gets hurt. He loses a limb, gets it replaced, and the place that he's staying, they say, "Hey, you can't use Zolidone anymore," which is the drug that he uses. And he's like, "What?" But pretty much Zolidone, the whole point of it is that he suppresses his emotions and his feelings, and he's not allowed to feel the world. It's supposed to make them better warriors. When they're in battle, they don't feel anything. But he uses it recreationally. Anyways, he's a drug addict. And so these people that he's with that saved him, that healed his leg, they're like, "You can't take Zolidone anymore." And there's this great quote that the leader says to him that goes, "Life is meant to be felt. Else why live? Valleys make the mountains." That's pretty cool. I'll translate that into our lingo, but life is meant to be felt. Why else live? It's the only thing I really need to translate there. But it is true. The valleys of your life, it makes the mountains. And so when you're in those low periods of times, recognize that you are in a low period and that it will get better and you will survive and become better for it. And it helps you develop that grit, that mental toughness to stay in the fight. Because ultimately, if you're able to crawl through a valley, maybe it's full of mud, there's bugs everywhere, there's mosquitoes biting your neck, it's humid, it's gross. And then when you summit that mountain, the view up there is going to be much better. You're going to have fresh air. You're going to feel the sun on your face. It's going to be beautiful. But it's all because you were able to stay in that valley so long that you made it to the trailhead and got all the way up the mountain. Ask yourself, can you stick with it when it's not fun? I got to be honest, sometimes doing this podcast is not fun. It's a lot of work. I have to prep outlines. I have to take time out of my day to actually record, which I enjoy doing, so don't think it's a bad thing. But it's a lot of work that goes into it. Then I have to edit it. Then I have to publish it. Then I have to post about it. It's a second job. But it's something I enjoy. And on those days when it's not fun, when it's not super exciting, I just remember what I'm trying to build. And it's a platform where I'm able to inspire others to take a chance on themselves, to push their limits and to see what they're capable of. Because my life has changed so drastically because I wanted to see what I was capable of doing. And it came from one choice. But I had to commit to that goal. And then when I did, I recognized that maybe that's not my limit and I can push it just a little bit further. So ask yourself if you're in that moment, if you're in that time where you need to find something to push you, be honest about it and find out whatever that is. Now, number 4 is commit like your life depends on it. So I found this interesting story. It's about the marathon monks of Mount Hiei. I think that's how you say it. The marathon monks. Okay, get this. So these dudes in Japan, they run insane distances. Like marathons daily for 7 years. After 100 days, it's do or die. Like they finish or get out of the group. Is that extreme? Yes. That's insane. But the lesson itself is gold. Commitment kills excuses. And you don't need to be a monk. I'm not saying you need to be a monk, but you need to lock in. You need to lock into that goal. Tell other people about your goal. Make sure they hold you accountable. And set a schedule. And burn the boats. What I mean by that is don't look back. If you have a goal in mind, take one step every single day towards it. If it's important to you, you will make time for it. And you will try to get better. Because you don't want to live a life of regret. And oftentimes, we regret what we don't stick with. Quitting is so easy. It's the easiest thing you can do. Especially when it's hard. But that's the exact moment that you need to tell yourself you're sticking to it. And that you committed. And because of that commitment, nothing's going to shy you away from this goal. You are going to push. You're going to fight. You need to know that you're capable of doing more because that's how confidence grows. And when you have confidence, your whole life changes because you now don't look at life as a victim. You look at it as someone who's making changes and who's taking it by the horns and making their own story, making their own life. Your journey is unique. So treat it as such. Don't try and live someone else's life. No, this is you, the listener. I'm talking to literally you right now. I'm in your ears. So think about that for a second. What can you be doing to push? And how can you commit yourself a little bit more? Does that look like maybe you write sticky notes and put it on your bathroom mirror so you always see it every single day to say, hey, remember your goal. It could be, let's take the guitar guy, for example. Go through your scales. Maybe you take that, write it on a sticky note, slap it on the mirror. So every single day you are reminded, hey, you know what? I need to take some time to work on my skill, to work on what I'm getting after. Make it easy for yourself, but commit to it. Put a reminder on your phone every single day. Commit to the goal. Stay the course. Number 5 is very important, though. It's staying flexible. Because don't get it twisted. Mental toughness is not blind stubbornness. It's not. It's adaptability. Life's going to punch you in the face. Like, your plans will fail. Your injuries could happen. But toughness is pivoting without whining, without complaining. And if you're training for a race and you tweak your knee, then switch to swimming. Like I'm so sad about this, but Nick Bear, I'm wearing his shirt right now, Bear Performance Nutrition. Not sponsored, but would love to be. Nick Bear, please. I also wanted to run your backyard ultra marathon this year, but I didn't get drawn. So if you have an extra spot, Nick, I'd love it. Please. Please. Anyways, Nick Bear. He was originally running the Grandma's Marathon in Minnesota, which is the race that I signed up for in June. And I was pumped because I wanted to race against him. He's a hero of mine. He's someone I really admire and look up to. Like, he's built something very amazing with BPN. And he's inspiring others to run. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a group of runners like them. Like, there's so many people out there who are running, who are doing hybrid training because of Nick. And he is a hero of mine. And so I was pumped to race against him. And I still am going to train really hard for this race because now I'm using it as a training run. But earlier this year, he got hit by a car while he was out on a morning run. And nothing really happened at that time. I think he had some issues with his hip or something. But the boy didn't get knocked down. Well, he did get knocked down, actually, but he got back up. So that's good. Anyways, a couple weeks ago, he posted that his ankle and his Achilles were getting horrible. Like, he was feeling some serious pain in them. He posted a picture, and it was like bruised and super swollen. And a couple days later, after that post, he said, "I am dropping out of the Grandma's Marathon." And I was a little hurt, not gonna lie. But Nick isn't someone who stops, and so he's like, "Yep, I'm out of this race. So until that point, until I can run again, I'm going to just train on my bike." And now he just posts all these videos of him on like a stationary bike, just getting after it in his garage. But he's committed to staying fit. He's committed to going one more. And because of that, he adapted and he was flexible. Because leading up to this event, he was like, "I'm going to run a 2:30 marathon. I'm going to run a 2:30 marathon." That's so fast. That's damn fast. Like, I was going to have to really push myself on this one. So I'm going for a 2:45, and then hopefully when Nick's better, I can race and get to a 2:30 and fight against him. All good competition. I don't have any beef with you, Nick. In fact, maybe you want to hang out sometime. Just a thought. But I think it shows that he was able to adapt and still get after it. Like, that's mental toughness in its, I guess, full form. And he kept moving forward, just differently. Now, when I started this podcast, I had absolutely no clue what I was doing. I had crappy equipment. I think I filmed on my just my laptop in my basement, so you'd see all my like family pictures behind me and all this random stuff. But I do remember I set a goal. I was like, "Hey, I'm going to do 1 episode a week, no skips." And sometimes I would just stare at the mic and say, "I've got nothing. I've got nothing." Or some days I'd be like, "I don't want to do this today." But I had to show up and I had to keep doing it because I committed to it. And I record anyway because of that commitment. And so that consistency built my mental toughness, at least on the podcasting front. And it's why you're still hearing me today. Because there are days when I get discouraged or when I feel like I'm not getting my message across as well as I'd like. And I beat myself up a little bit. But the important piece is that I don't stop, that I'm staying in the game, And yes, there are some episodes that are clearly worse than others. Again, I will shout out episode 8, Stan Watts. Great guest. I love Stan. But we filmed it and recorded it all in auto-tune. So it's Brett Payne and Stan Payne instead of T-Pain recording a podcast that time. But again, another lesson learned. So, did it make me better? Yes, because now I know to check every single freaking time if I'm on auto-tune or not. And I'm not today, so that's good. But it is very important to stay flexible. Like, it's part of commitment. And when life throws you challenges, when it throws you roadblocks, when they show up in your way, like, figure out what you can do to just keep going and be adaptable. And another good example of this is, like, when I go on work trips, I would say it's probably 162.3% harder to work out than when it is at home, because I'm out of my routine, and usually I'm pretty tired mentally because I'm talking to people all day, or I have late dinners. Like, it's a hard thing to do, but I have to be flexible sometimes. And so sometimes I do need extra sleep in the morning, and I'll work out at nighttime, or I'll have some space in the middle of the day. I'll go get a quick workout in and come back strong. Like, you have to be adaptable, because that shows a lot of mental toughness, that you're still committed enough to your goal, that when your routine gets flustered, you're still able to get the job done. And it's going to happen to you. But this is where you come in. Think about what your grind is. Like, pick a goal, start a habit, and stick with it. Don't buy the myth that tough people don't feel fear, because I feel fear all the time. But I push past it. I keep going. So, doubts are normal. Doubts are very normal. Questioning yourself is very normal, and your abilities. Quitting, though, is an option. And that's where I don't want you to quit. Whatever it is you're doing, that you're a little unsure of the journey, that you're a little unsure of how you're going to keep going, don't quit. Figure out how you can adapt. Figure out what you can do to adjust. And from there, take one more step. So what is your move? Maybe it's a project you've been dodging, or a workout that you've been skipping. Could be a dream that you've put on the shelf for a while. Whatever it is, start small, stay steady, be consistent, and watch what happens. Mental toughness is your edge. It's what separates the doers from the dreamers. And it's not about flexing through a crisis. It's about the quiet, consistent hustle every damn day. And I have some homework for you. Hope that's not a scary thing, but I want you to think about these 5 steps and how you can incorporate them into your life and ultimately work on your own mental toughness. So, I have a step with each of these, or I have a homework assignment for each of these steps that we've talked about. So, number 1, pick one goal for the next 3 months. Make it crystal clear. That's number 1. 2, start one tiny habit to back it up. It's so easy, like, make it so easy that you cannot flake it. You can't get out of this one. 3, next time you want to quit, think, why did I start? And then take one step. Do not quit. Quitting leads to a life of regret. Number 4, celebrate the boring wins. As silly as that might sound, you need to do it. Like, focus on the process over the prizes and celebrate the process. Number 5, when life shifts, pivot. When life shifts, pivot. Don't pout. Don't say, oh, poor me. No. If you do that, you won't develop mental toughness. You need to be strong. So pivot. And I want to reiterate that this is a muscle. Like, flex it daily, and it'll carry you further than you think. I've seen it in my own grind, in my own journey, whatever you want to call it. And I know you've got it in you too, because no one is born with mental toughness. It has to be trained. So what's your takeaway? Whatever it is, I'd love to know. Like, you can send me a message on Instagram, X, send me a message on my my newsletter. You can sign up for that on my website. But I want to know, because ultimately, mental toughness will be developed the more you work it, and you will become a better person for it. And once you understand this, oftentimes that's where your journey starts. So take one step daily, make it crystal clear, and do what you got to do. That's how you get mentally tough. I appreciate you for listening to this one. It's this is a topic that's become more and more important to me over the years because I've seen it in my own life. And before I wrap up, I'll give a quick story about Team Tim. I was running this race and I was going after a relatively fast time. I was going to PR my half marathon, but I didn't realize there was 33,000 people there. And so I started out pretty strong, but my challenge was I was running into so many people. Like, there was one point where I was in the middle of the median, in the middle of, like, on the strip of Las Vegas. It was very thick dirt. It felt like I was running in sand. And so my time started to falter because I was trying to pass all these people and I was trying to do all these things, and I was getting pretty mad. And I looked at my watch and I was like, there's no way I'm going to PR my half marathon. And instead of giving up and just being like, whatever, screw this, I just pivoted. And I was like, I'm just going to have fun with this race. I ended that with a 1:36 half marathon. And I was pretty proud about it. You know, I faced a lot of slow people in my way at the beginning. I'm not calling anyone slow, but there was just so many people that I had to pass through them. And then I'd get fast, and then someone would get in my way, and I'd have to slow down again and then try and pass them. And I just had fun with it. But I didn't quit. And whatever thing is in front of you that you might think is incredibly difficult, I plead with you just to not quit. Because you have something of value to add to the world. That's why the world's great. It's because everyone's different. Everyone's working on their own things. But that's how we all benefit from each other. Develop that mental toughness in yourself, and you will see yourself take strides you never thought was possible before. I appreciate it for listening. If this helped you at all, please share it with someone else who you might think might need a little mental tough pushed. Reach out to me if you ever have questions, if you ever want to be a guest. But until next episode, everyone, keep getting after it. Thanks, guys.